My name is Rebecca Bellantoni. I'm an artist, and today we're in my studio in Kilburn. I work to tell the story of, at the moment, people that live in the city and how their lives are shaped by their religious beliefs, by their spiritual beliefs, by the hand of the ancestors that are on them, by the landscape that we live in, by the geographies that we create.
Our landscape is its own monument. Its meaning can only be traced on the underside. It is all history.
Well, my most recent work is titled Do You Have Any Peace for Me, Cry? Essentially, the installation is meant to act as the inside of spaces that exist in real life that operate as, the clearest word I could use is chapel, but I struggle to use that word because it has such Christian connotations. What a chapel is essentially is a home for the spirit. Without the ability to build that building, I just created what it would feel like inside of that space. And attached to that was also a therapy room where people from the local community offered their services to other people in the community. There's something that I really love about the form of this piece. I mean, I made it, but it feels like I didn't. It has this kind of ownership of its form. I had a conversation with this man who I said to him, oh, you know, are you okay? Like, you're doing okay? Do you need anything? And he said to me, you have any peace for me? As if like, well, I don't need anything, but do you have some peace for me? And then I decided that actually what I would do is try to imagine the form of that person, not figuratively, but the kind of energetical form of that person. And this was the first person who kickstarted the idea. And so I think that might be why I have such a strong connection to this piece. When I made this, I was thinking about the line that Kendrick Lamar says when he speaks about after his grandmother dying that there's nobody praying for him anymore. I realised that that's probably the same for me as well. So I was like, okay, what can I do that can speak to my grandmother's faith? Faith is so different for so many people, and it depends on what you put your faith in. I think for me, faith is an understanding that while I'm here, I'm here. I have faith in what's happening right now, and faith that whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll be able to deal with it in my life and also in my practice. Like if a problem comes up through it, I do have faith that I'll be able to work through it. You know, there's no kind of fear. So maybe that's what faith is for me, a kind of the opposite to fear. I'm over the moon to be nominated for the Max Mara Art Prize for Women because it's confirmation of my faith, essentially. I was so overwhelmed with who I was nominated by. That was also a very exciting and overwhelming part of the prize. And then the opportunity, the possible opportunity to go and partake in this residency, then the opportunity to make work and show that work is just one of those kind of opportunities that keeps on giving and giving and giving and giving.
My name is Bhajan Hunjan. I'm an artist and I make prints, I make paintings, and I work on public art projects. Well, my practice ranges quite some time, almost 20 to 30 years, in fact more. There have been periods where the earlier work was very much about my identity. It was very much about being a woman. It was very much about some of the personal issues that spilled over into political and social issues. After I left the Slade, I returned back to Reading. I started working at a women's refuge, and it was one of the first South Asian refugees outside London. So my thoughts were very much about those kind of different goalposts that women work and their lives are within. And that led to self-portraits and a whole body of work which questioned my own position within that. I think my journey into public art happened very naturally. It took me back to how women work within their domestic environment. My mother did that, whether they would make little crochet pieces or knitted pieces. They sort of come together in a much larger scheme. I think public art projects for me were how little bits can then come together as larger installations or larger environmental spaces that people can enjoy. In the studio, it's wonderful to be able to play and not be restricted. It's very much about just letting go and enjoying the creative process. I think for me, even throughout my journey as an artist, what's been really important is how that creative process connects to your inner involvement. You know, this is a spiral, we're chasing things all the time. So any experience which can make us still and bring us to that silence, I think is a spiritual experience, because we just don't have it anymore. To be nominated for the Max Mara Prize with Whitechapel Gallery for 2024 is just so exciting.
My name's Onyeka Igwe. I was born in London and I'm based in London. I work between cinema and installation, with video primarily, but also I work with sound and text and performance. I've been researching and thinking about memorials for a while. I went on a research trip to Argentina to kind of look into the history of memorialization there. So this is from the Memorial Park. And this is a space where I was recording sound, and I kind of wanted to remember what the space looked like. I started thinking about ways in which we remember. History and political questions are kind of what animates me. So memorials are just like another way of bringing the past into the present and also into the future, keeping certain stories alive. The last film that I made, which was called The Miracle on George Green, came about when I was walking around Hackney Marshes, remembering a little bit of my childhood and of this protest that happened when I was growing up, these road protests, and me having this kind of hazy memory of those protests and wanting to like think about them and research them and know a bit more about them.
People power is people power, the power of the pickaxe. Communities, communities, we're stronger than bulldozers.
My research is a lot of the time like talking to people, and then I was collecting all these songs because from one of the interviews I got serenaded by Samuel Delaney from the song that he learned at protest camp. So then I started asking people about songs and collecting these songs and making this songbook. All of those things take time. So ideally each film would be kind of embedded in my life. It would take a few years, I think. The way I think about my practice or how I process or how I work is that there's these ideas out in the world, or these things, these concepts, these events out in the world that I might be interested in. Research and making is about like taking them inside, into my body in some way, and processing them from my own experiences, my own feelings, my senses, and then producing something that goes out there again into the world that can be experienced by other people. And so it's always, it's about it going through me and my particular take and approach and my reaction and my embodiment of thinking about that idea. I'm really excited to be nominated for the Max Mara Art Prize for Women. It feels important to be noted in some way, for people to like recognise the work that you've been doing. And then I just think the whole award is really comprehensive. There's like many different parts of it, and I think that kind of approach to thinking about noting someone's work but also progressing it into the future is really something that I'm grateful for.
Nourished with these concepts, nourished with these concepts, bequeathed to us,
for the restoration
permeating our political
of the
fabric.
dignity.
I'm Zinzi Minott. My practice is mostly focused on the relationship between dance and politics. It can be like stretched out to be looking at questions of what it means to have a body. I think I'm really lucky to have a dance practice and to have danced all my life. It was probably the most that I realized how lucky I am to have that was in lockdown when I wasn't dancing, and I really realized that my mental health is held together by like pliés and bass lines. I had no idea how fundamental that daily practice of being in a dance studio is to my sense of sanity. Dance is not an easy place to be a Black woman. Dance has a lot of failings, which is mostly why I started to move into like performance and live art spaces, and why there is this pattern of Black dancers doing that. I mean, Blood Sound is just, it's amazing. I think a lot of that work was about scale, trying to take up a lot of space as a very small person. Also like a testament to my culture. I grew up with a sound system in my house. My dad's a DJ. I grew up around music, and it's such a huge part of how we commune as Caribbean people. I think the Caribbean genius, the cultural production of that small island, Jamaica, and all the Caribbean islands is so underrated, so underrespected, and massively consumed. Jamaica as a contemporary place is a place born out of the legacy of the Atlantic slave trade. And I wanted to talk about like the blood of a people that have been used, and their labor has been used to facilitate a lot of richness. I wanted to make a work that honored and spoke to that loss and that blood. I've been using the glitch actually from before for them. It's a bit of stock footage that I've had for years. I feel like it's what it feels like when you encounter racism in your life. You're living your life and somebody puts right really close in your face the value of your life in comparison to theirs, and the way that people weaponize racism is its power. They're like letting you know that they know that there's a system in place, and that system puts you underneath them.
The large influx of coloured people from Commonwealth countries has created several problems.
And at any moment they can draw for it. I don't know, I'm like, did that just happen? Like it glitches. It's like a real interruption or an interference with your day or your sense of self for like a second or like a week, you know, a lifetime. The glitch and how I'm using it seems to really be able to get us to have a conversation. The Max Mara Art Prize for Women, I am actually unbelievably excited. I really am. I mean, across the board, it's like an amazing prize. Everybody knows it's an amazing prize. It's a game-changing prize. Yeah. I'm sure you could put that in the captions. Everybody knows that. And that in of itself is really exciting. And it's nice to be seen. I've been doing this a long time. And then to get that email, and I was like, oh, I did it. Like, I got out of lockdown. I fought for my life this year, and it was worth it. And like, that's just like, it's bliss. It's amazing.
My name is Dominique White, and I'm based mostly between Essex and Marseille. I'm currently speaking from Florence right now, which is one of my locations where I produce quite a lot. I was very interested in creating new worlds for Blackness, but then I kind of realized in order to get there, because it's always perceived as not being compatible with the present or the current system we have, you'd have to completely destroy the system that we work to. I create haunting, ghost-like shipwrecks that tower over the viewer. I guess I describe it as ghostly because there's this volatile nature to the majority of my work. It's as if you've thrown like a net in the sea and you've captured aspects of a lost society. I always like to say they're like moments in time. I want the viewer to have to try and navigate the space as opposed to the work being put in like a plinth or like a perspex box. You know, I use a lot of kaolin clay, and the iron is kind of untreated, so it starts to change color, and obviously like sometimes the mahogany is fractured. There is this sense that the work can still mutate or change, or, you know, when I make a hanging work, for example, if you walk around it, it almost breathes. So it doesn't feel like it's a static, dead object. It kind of feels like it's humming or breathing. This is Cinders of the Wreck, which was a show I did earlier this year in France, kind of like this combination of cast iron where you can kind of see aspects of myself actually. And so this is like the kind of kaolin that I use and a lot of raffia and sisal rope. So you can see how it's very fragile, but also suspended in this moment. There's this term called hierarchy, which is essentially like gaining power over land via the sea. Without the slave trade and without these points of trade, we wouldn't have the society or capitalism as we have it now, or like ideas of race, ideas of borders. Any of that wouldn't exist without these 250 years of trade, essentially, in which hierarchies were formed. At the same time, like, the sea is such a terrifying entity that there's so much unknown about it, and I think that's why I'm so fascinated by it. I'm really excited to be nominated because I never ever thought I'd get to this point in my career to be recognized as such. It feels very surreal, and it's like a great privilege.